Hello. I'm sorry about the disconnection. There something happened and I was not online anymore and I'm here back. Welcome Hulya. How are you today? I'm so glad
Thank
to
you.
host you here.
Thank you. Thank you, Seda. Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I would like to jump into my first question. Your career spans over 2 decades across diverse industries and countries. How has working in such very variable settings shaped your approach to mental health treatment and client care?
Well, I think the main thing it does, it's made me very humble. I feel very honored to be able to be in such a position where I can work in different countries and work with different cultures. I think it's given me a lot of insight into how different people live and how different cultures actually interact with each other. And I think that's become a very valuable part of my practice. And I integrate that, and I make sure I integrate that into all my sessions.
Yeah, and you contributed to an article about video conferencing based CBT for youth during the COVID-19 pandemic. What were the most surprising insights or challenges you encountered while implementing online CBT interventions?
Well, I think even just COVID in itself was something very unexpected and, as everyone knows, very surprising. So we didn't really know how to maneuver that. And as part of the team at Ibn Khaldun University, as part of the Department of Psychology, we wanted to make sure that we could learn something from COVID and learn about the difficulties that people were facing during COVID, especially the learning difficulties that teens and adolescents were facing. So in the study that was conducted by our PhD students, we looked at the anxiety levels and the interactions in adolescence. And I think the hardest thing was to actually engage. It's hard to engage teens and adolescents anyway. So especially when you're doing that online, and especially when you're doing that in an environment when these kids didn't have any connections, they weren't able to go to school, they weren't able to do their normal things like go out and be social with their friends, and then us expecting them to engage with us online was very difficult. But we were able to overcome that just by sharing our insights, just by being open and being and listening to them. We were able to get them to engage with us and to participate. We would have liked them to be participate even more so, but it was very hard for them, and it was very hard for everybody. COVID was a very hard time. I can't believe it was already 5 years ago. So
Yes,
time
I can.
passes so quickly.
Yes, and during this time, how did you find your insights to help you in a coaching way to help these young people? You know, you're researching in psychology, but also you have two sons, and you are full around. You have a lot of young people. How did you find yourself as a coach? I mean, you're not a coach. I mean, like all of us have this kind of abilities tap into in these difficult times. How did you find yourself with these?
I think the biggest thing that I learned and that I found useful was to be able to try to make connections. You know, we're very used to having physical connections, but over COVID, everybody came online, so people were missing that. We were feeling really isolated. So I felt that people wanted to connect more. They were reaching out more. So we're being really clever about the way we actually connected online. You know, for instance, platforms like Zoom that didn't exist before. We were all getting up and doing Zumba classes on Zoom, and we were doing, different things, exercises, and all sorts of things online. So I think human nature, inherently, we are part of a group. We want to be part of a group. So, COVID didn't necessarily stop that. If anything, it made some of our connections stronger, even though they're online. So yeah, that was the biggest insight, I think, knowing that we can still connect, but we just have to find new ways to do that.
Yes, I'm seeing my signal is going yellow. I'm so sorry about this connection. If I fall again, bear with me,
Oh, that's
please.
fine. If you fall again, I'll just keep talking about psychology. So I'm happy to do
Thank
that.
you. Okay, as someone who has managed and supervised multidisciplinary teams, what strategies have you found most effective in fostering collaboration among mental health professionals?
Oh God, I don't even think it's just mental health professionals. I think it's just professionals in general. As you know, Seda, I was also deployed after the earthquakes that we had in Turkey, and I know we're going to talk about that a bit later. But I think it's about, when you look at change, when you look at people, managing people, regardless if they're mental health or regardless of whatever profession they are, we need to get buy-in from people. So you need to get people to be invested in the message that you're selling, basically. So in the message that you're giving. So to do that, there has to be a need that's met in that people. So it's finding a common thread. It's finding a common goal, uniting people in that common goal or the common outcome is usually the best way to get people to interact. And of course, it's individuals as well. It's making sure you know what each individual needs and why they're there, but making sure that you connect that to the bigger value, to connect that to the overarching value. I find that, yeah. So again, it's about connections in a way, but it's about being part of something bigger and sort of coming together around a shared group of goals and values.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, I mean, this COVID taught us a lot of things. The best teaching is about collaboration, probably. We were we were thinking that we could achieve everything by ourselves before COVID. After that, we thought, okay, this is not going by myself. I have to collaborate with someone else in
That's
order to
right.
have some relationship, in order
Well, we
to
need
feel.
it. Well, when you look at evolution, people weren't made to be alone. We're made to be part of a group of different groups, and we need that interaction. So that's who we are.
Yeah. So, since moving to Istanbul, you established a practice catering to foreigners and teach at Ibn Haldun University. How has the cultural transition influenced your therapeutic and academic approaches?
Well, I was not an academic at all. I'll be very honest. I've been a clinical psychologist. I've been a clinician. I called myself a clinician for over 18 years. And I never really thought of being in academia. I always thought that I'd be with clients because I love people and I love interacting with people. So when, a friend of mine, actually, a friend from my son's school, the owner of the school, asked me to have a coffee with somebody who was the head of the department of Ibn Haldun University. I just thought, okay, I'll have a coffee, but I wouldn't be interested in teaching. And so when he sort of asked if I would be a guest lecturer, I did, and I loved it. I loved meeting the students. I loved interacting with the postgraduate students and the psychologists of tomorrow, of the future. And so that sort of led into becoming a supervisor in the clinic, and then that led to, can you lecture on one subject, and so that led to, say, lecturing on three or four subjects. So all of a sudden, before I knew it, I've become an academic. I think they are different. Seeing clients that, in my office or in a hospital setting is very different to teaching, to lecturing. But I think my passion is psychology. My passion is mental health and wellness and well-being. So having an audience, whoever that is captivating to me. And I find that I love the energy of the future generation of psychologists. So I love being able to interact with them and share the experiences that I've had as a clinician. I think, as students, it's valuable to them to learn what to expect in the field, and so being able to share my expertise and being able to share my stories and share my experiences. Obviously, protecting the names of my clients. I think that's been valuable to them, and I found that this is where I'm more gravitating to. So now I've actually left Ibn Haldun University because I've left Turkey. I've left Istanbul. Well, I'm in Istanbul now, but I'm based in Sydney again now with my husband. And I'm actually starting from next month. I'll be lecturing at the University of New England in Australia. So the university that I'm actually doing my PhD in. So I'll continue my lecturing journey. But anyway, I've digressed a bit. Coming to Turkey was a totally different culture for me. My background is Turkish, but I'd never lived in Turkey before. So I come from, like, in Australia, it's a very multicultural, sort of surrounding as it is in the UK. But Turkey wasn't like that when I first came. The majority, was 90% Turkish people, and they weren't used to necessarily having an influx of foreigners, even though we have now. When you look at Turkey, even in the 6 years that I've been here, it's changed so much. So right now, Istanbul is becoming a very diverse city, but it wasn't diverse initially. So when you're training people or when you're training psychologists to provide psychological practices in a culturally diverse network versus a culturally indiverse network, it's actually very different. So being very aware of that and being aware of the social and societal expectations, the norms, the cultural, what's okay, what's not okay in cultures. So cultural psychology is very, very important, and addressing cultures and people and your clients in a culturally appropriate way is very, very important. And sort of I learned that obviously in Turkey being so similar, and I think passing that on to my students, because they sort of noticed as the years went by and as Turkey's become more diverse now, they're finding that they have to change the way they practice to make sure that they can meet the needs of their changing clientele as well.
Yeah, I mean, this is a very enriched environment. I can tell from what I hear. They are so lucky to have you in their
Oh,
lecture
thank you.
lessons, and now
I'm
you're
lucky. I'm the lucky one.
yeah, you're carrying that experience from Turkey to back to
Yes,
Australia to those
yes,
students. That is
yes.
very valuable. I am so glad that you had this experience and your students will have the experience.
Thank you. I'm looking forward to it. I'm very excited. But I won't cut my connections with my students here. We still keep in touch a lot, and I still have a connection with the university. So I'm sure that we'll collaborate again in the near
Yes.
future.
Yes, that's very necessary in this, changing world with immigrants all over the world because of the wars and everything. And yeah, it is very valuable to have intracultural experiences.
Absolutely.
And there is another topic that is very sensitive. In the
Okay.
aftermath of the devastating 6th February earthquake in Turkey, how has your experience and expertise in treating anxiety and trauma helped you address the unique mental health challenges faced by survivors? Because I know I've seen you been to the field
Yeah.
frequently, many times with your team, with the I don't know, you'll tell about it, but what key strategies or approaches have proven most effective in such crisis situations?
Well, to be honest, nothing that we knew prepared us. So, and I know that I shouldn't be saying this as a professional because people look up to us to know the answers, and we didn't know the answers. So when we looked up the research of what we can actually do and how we can help these people, as soon as we heard about these earthquakes, there wasn't a lot of information out there. We know that the first line of treatment is psychological first aid, just like if there's a physical accident, you do physical first aid on people. The same thing for psychological. You do what we call psychological first aid. But that was all we could find. I couldn't find, I was trying to give this training to the therapists that I was going to take with me, to the clinicians, but I couldn't find enough to be able to prepare them. So, prepare them for what they were going to see. But nothing can really prepare you for that. Like, when I first went, I went before I took my clinicians. The university sort of charged me and two other people to go and do a fact finding mission to see where we could be more useful. And we actually got to the zone 4 days after the earthquakes. And nothing I could have ever seen prepared me for that. And you were one of the people. I shared a lot of that on my Instagram diaries because that for me was therapy. I just didn't know how to cope with what I was seeing. So I was sharing my experiences to just put it out there, but also for me, so I could debrief myself. And so, what we found was nothing we learned was useful there. Like, you can't do therapy with people there because, you know, we were there a couple of months even after the earthquake struck, and people were still, in the bottom of what we call Maslow's hierarchy. I'm sure a lot of people are familiar with Maslow's hierarchy. Dr. Maslow was a doctor in the early 1900s and came up with a hierarchy of needs. And on the bottom was this physical. The physical needs like the safety, food, shelter, those sort of things. So people were still at that level, and they were still at that level even 2 months after the earthquakes. And that's surprising. We expect people to go past that, and we expect people to be on a level where you can actually give them some psychological therapy, but they were not. This trauma was such a huge trauma for them, and it was over, as 10 cities. So it was a collective trauma that the whole neighborhood, that the whole city was experiencing. And we were based in Adiyaman, and in Adiyaman, the whole city was destructed. There wasn't a city left. So all these people were living in tent villages, and they didn't have their basic needs met. So that it was about safety, security, shelter, food, essential items, food, hygiene, the personal items for these people. So before we overcame those, we couldn't actually talk about their psychology. They weren't ready for that. So it was more about, we were psychologists, but we were like, oh, do you need water? Or do you need this? You go there, you go this. So it was about passing on correct information, passing on, where they could go to get these services they needed. So it was more of that. We were sort of like middle people. We were and we were just listening. So a lot of our job was just to be able to let people talk,
Yeah.
because there was a lot of guilt. They felt a lot of guilt of being alive. They felt guilt for not being able to help their neighbors, because the devastation was massive. Over 60,000 people died in these earthquakes. So there wasn't a family or a person that wasn't affected or didn't know someone who passed away. So the sorrow and the grief was so severe that they didn't want therapy. They just wanted to list. They just wanted to vent. They just wanted to talk. So a lot of it was about that. And actually, from that came something good for me, because this experience changed me forever. I think it changed everybody that went there. It totally changed who we are, and how we see our world. So for me, on a personal level, I didn't want to let this go, because I know that I felt that we weren't equipped. So as a result, I've actually started my PhD on this. So I'm actually my PhD topic is on looking at coping in mental health providers that are deployed following natural disasters. So what I'd like to achieve from this is actually prepare or have something universal, global, because I don't feel that we have a global training.
Mhm.
Other than psychological first aid, we don't have, our mental health providers aren't prepared enough for deployment following natural disasters. And as the world, global warming is happening, so natural disasters are increasing. 2 months ago in Florida, last month in Spain. So this is just happening all the time. So we need our mental health people to be trained, and we need them ready to go
Mhm.
and to be deployed. So, because mental health providers are usually the first ones there and the last ones to leave. So we have to
Mhm.
make sure that they're able to cope, and we have to make sure that they have the skills and the training that they need to do that. So that's what my PhD topic is on now, and I've started that with the University of New England. So hopefully in 2.5 3 years, I hope to create a training manual that will almost be like, the physical first aid training, but it'll be psychological first aid training. And also there'll be a part for supervisors to help them sort of cope or support the providers that are working in the field.
Yeah,
So yeah,
I mean, wow. I'm so looking forward to your thesis. Does it call thesis for the doctorate also?
it is. Yes, it is. I'm looking forward to seeing it too. I don't know when I will, but I'm looking forward to seeing it. It's
If you
really
if you need any help with the researches, you can send the links to us, and we can, send it to
that'll be
everybody we
great.
know to
Yeah, that'll be good,
understand.
because I'm actually
Yes.
going to wanting to.
Yeah,
That'll be
yeah.
great, because I'm actually hoping to interview the therapists, the mental health providers that were deployed after the Turkish earthquakes. But I'm also going to do a cross cultural comparison, because we had massive floods in Australia in 2022. So I'd like to interview those mental health providers as well, so I can do a cross cultural comparison, and have two cohorts from different countries, and be
Yeah.
able to compare them as well. So I've got a lot of work in front of me, but I have two amazing supervisors that are supporting me. So we'll see how I go.
Great. I'm sure it's gonna be great, and the results will help a lot of people, hopefully,
I
in the
hope so.
field.
I hope
Yeah.
so.
So my last question for young psychologists and mental health professionals entering the field, what advice would you offer about balancing evidence-based practices with the art of understanding diverse client needs?
That's a really great question. But I think even before that, I'd ask them to sort of look at themselves, to sort of, have that insight into themselves, and to see what they bring to the table, because we all come with our biases, we all come with our views of life. So it's really important to know what you bring to the table, so you can actually leave your stuff at the door and go into it looking at the client, and just focusing on what the client needs. So I think that's the first thing I'd recommend. And I think I'd also sort of suggest to them is to find their identity as a clinician. When we first enter this field, we're all excited, we're all nervous, we don't know what sort of clinician we're going to be. We all try to act like this, perfect clinician, but there's no such thing. I think you bring your personality to it. Like, I'm a very bubbly person. I'm a very passionate person, and this comes across in my sessions. This come across with my clients. So it's my sort of identity and what I bring to the table. So I'd suggest to them to be yourself. There's enough clients for everyone. Don't try to pretend to be a clinician that you're not, because there will be clients that are drawn to you no matter what. And to also practice, always practice evidence-based practice, but think outside the square. Like, don't, like, for instance, I'll give you an example. I don't usually like treating clients in my office because they don't have anxiety or depression in my office. They have it outside. So I like treating them where they actually experience those symptoms. So usually most of my sessions are outdoors or out,
Wow.
either we're walking or we're in a mall or we're somewhere else. We're not in my office because they're safe in my office. That's not where they're experiencing it. So I'd suggest to the next, future generation of mental health workers, use your experience, use your knowledge, use the evidence-based practices, best practice, but do it in a way that's going to work for you and work for your clients. So make it in a way that's unique to you, and enjoy it. You've got to be passionate. This is a really hard career path, because you're taking on a lot of emotional baggage of people. So it's got to be in a way that works for you, but also works for your clients. So that's what
Wow.
I'd suggest.
That is great advice. I
Thank you.
am, yeah, I'm going to use it in my coaching
I hope
sessions.
so. Absolutely.
So before we go, is there a one last message that you would like to give to our audience?
Um, I don't know. There's so much. Find your passion. I'd say you can't do anything in life if you're not passionate about it. That's what drives you, and that's what gives you longevity. So do what you're driven to do, and do what you're passionate about. That's what I'd suggest.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Before we end this session, I would like to encourage our audience to hit the subscribe button on our channel for more insightful sessions like this. And don't miss out on this captivating 5 o'clock tea talks. Hit the ring button and remember to subscribe. For more great content, visit www.thecoachmagazine.com and
She's frozen. Thank you for having me. This was really fun.
enjoy our quarterly magazines. Once your message, our videos, wherever you would like to find us. And thank you so much, Julia, for being here. It was very nice to see you again.
You
I hope
too.
in further collaborations.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. This was so much fun.
Thank you.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye.
Take care.